up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back to talk about Lions training camp as week number 2 is underway and day 5 is in the books. So let's get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. And we got a lot of things to discuss in today's video, so I'm excited. We're not only going to be talking about training camp today and what went down, but also the last couple of days. Yeah, we got some things to dive into. We got some news, we got some notes, we got some quotes, something else. We got a lot of things to talk about today for the Lions, so I'm excited. Now, unfortunately, I was unable to make it to Lions training camp today. Yes, it was very disheartening, but the goal is to be back tomorrow when the pads come on. Yeah, the Lions are putting the pads on tomorrow, and everything gets real. From the offensive lineman to the running back, Steve, really everybody. It gets real when the pads come on. And it's crazy how fast this offseason seems to be going. Tomorrow's day 6. We are a week and a half away from the Lions preseason opener. Like, we're like, I can literally see the preseason opener from that. Well, I can't, but we're that close. We're very close. So we got a lot of things to talk about in today's video. And let's just dive right into it. What I first want to discuss is who was there for the Lions, because Lions did make a move. They went out and signed an offensive lineman today, someone we discussed a little bit before. So we'll talk about that. A little bit of good news with this. Some players returning for Detroit today. Now, we're not talking about Troy Weaver, but Weaver was there from the Pistons. We are talking about the Lions players. Let's first start off with Jelani Tavai. I remember on Saturday not really seeing Jelani Tavai, but I never really took note of it. Well, apparently Jelani Tavai left basically after walkthroughs on Saturday, but the good news is he's back. And one thing I would say about Dan Campbell that we've seen in the past, but also we've seen so far this offseason, is really good about being cautious of his players. He doesn't push his players too hard, especially we've seen it so far this offseason, letting guys get rest, being cautionary if someone's dealing with something. Let's let the guy rest, let's give reps to someone else. We're not going to force him out there. It's a training camp. You don't want to get someone injured in this point, or you don't want to make it worse at this point. Now, it stinks for people on the bubble, but there are still preseason games, right? There's still time. So you'd rather take it a little bit slower with some of those guys, all right? And that's the good thing. Dan Campbell did this in the past as well with Miami. We heard about all these competitive and crazy practices, but he still gave them even more time to rest than Joe Philbin was doing when he was there. And I think we saw that on Saturday when they went with a little bit of a lighter practice. They ended a little early. I think we've seen it with some players. But when the pads come on, it's go time. However, he will give them time to rest. We'll see how that goes through training camp, because this is really his first offseason coaching a team. But we saw it back with the Dolphins that he was very careful, making sure that his guys got rest. But Tavai is back, so that's good news. I don't really know why I didn't note that I didn't see Tavai. But anyways, he's back, so that's awesome. And also, Hunter Thedford is back. Day 2 of Lions training camp, Hunter Thedford went out with an injury. Remember, he walked off on his own power, but it's very important that he gets back, because that backup tight end position, specifically third tight end position and down, is kind of up for grabs right now. Now, Alize Mack seems like the number 3 tight end, but there's still spots open. I would say Hock and Fells are really the only true locks right now. All right, so it's a gap. And there's spots to be open. And today we got to see some tight ends get involved. Charlie Taumapau, and I've really struggled with that guy's name, but we got to see him a little bit. We got to see the Jake Hausmans, and also Hunter Thedford being back. So great news there. Derek Barnes hasn't been super involved so far through training camp. Maybe he's dealing with something, but he has seen pretty limited reps. And also Jalen Reeves-Maybin being on the COVID list still means that we've seen more reps for some of these other linebackers to get opportunities to prove themselves. And I would say so far they've made some names for themselves, and they put themselves in a good spot for this competition going through preseason. Today, we had some good plays from Anthony Pittman. Saturday, I know Sean Dion Hamilton was balling even before that. So linebackers have stepped up and taken advantage of some of the opportunity. Today, we had no Quentin Dunbar or really Reggie Gilbert, some more opportunities. And because of that, we saw Mike Ford get more reps. And of course, at the edge position, when you have that many edges like we do, and Austin Bryant is also still on the PUP list, Robert McCray, Julian Okwara, Charles Harris. And there's a lot of guys out there that are looking for reps, and that's what they're getting an opportunity to do. And also, DeAndre Swift was very limited today. He didn't get many reps, but Deuce Staley quickly responded with, hey, he's not hurt. It was kind of the day for him. It was kind of the maintenance day for him. And Deuce Staley made it pretty clear that it wasn't because he was dealing with an injury. So we'll see what happens there, but either way, he was very limited today, so we got to see more of Jamar Jefferson and Jamal Williams and those guys. The Lions went out and signed an offensive lineman today, and this is Evan Boehm. I think I'm saying his name right, Evan Boehm. Now, we didn't talk about him a ton, and we may have to do a separate video for this because if I dive into it too much, we'll be here all day. I'm not going to do like a film video on Evan Boehm here, but I do want to talk about him a little bit because I think this is a very interesting signing, and he's going to push some guys. I mean, this is a signing right before we go to pads, about a week and a half out from preseason. I expect to see him in the first preseason game, and he fills out that 90-man roster because the Detroit Lions right now have a lot of inexperience on the offensive line, specifically with the backup roles, and he's got a chance to potentially take someone's job. We'll see, but at very least, he's going to add some competition. A 27-year-old offensive lineman. He's been in the league for a few years, going back to 2016. He's played both guard and center, specifically back with Missouri. He started at left guard, moved to center for the last 40 games. He had 52 consecutive starts, which was a record in college football. That's very impressive. Goes out in the 4th round out of Missouri, drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, and a lot of people were thinking he'd be limited to that center role because of his build, just his size. However, Arizona maybe had some different ideas for him because in 2017, his second year in the league, he would start at right guard for 5 games, but it didn't go very well, so they benched him because their players got healthy. But then they had more injuries on the offensive line, so he came back into his starting role. But that was the last season that Arizona would keep him on the roster. They waived him. Then he was picked up by the LA Rams, which means that he has a connection with Brad Holmes directly and some of the players that were there, specifically guys like Jared Goff, on the practice squad. He didn't last very long on their practice squad as the Colts went out and signed him, added him to the roster, and later that season they would need him pretty big. They would need him a lot because he kind of mixed in at guard up until Ryan Kelly, their center, went down with an injury, who was playing at a super high level. So they asked Evan Boehm to go from guard to center. Now remember what I said. This was 40 games started at center back in college at Missouri, right? After the 12 he began to start with at left guard. And up to this point, he's pretty much only played guard in the NFL. So the Colts moved him to center here because of their injury. And he puts on the best stretch he's played up till this point in his career. If you want to use Pro Football Focus, you can. It's tough because we don't have all 22 because NFL Game Pass is hating right now. So I have a couple clips, but it's really tough to get film as of right now. But if you want to lean on PFF for this, during that season, he allowed 0 sacks, 2 penalties on about 350 snaps, 71.4 overall grade, 78.7 in pass protection, really good, and a 65.5 in run blocking. Again, it's not a huge sample size, but he definitely played his best football. And when you watch him, a couple takeaways I had is he's mobile, he's a finisher, and he even said himself he felt more comfortable playing at center. He looks like the guy that's built to play center. Pretty good recognition in terms of pass protection. He was able to run the offensive line. I didn't love that he had some inability to pick up guys at the second level. He showed mobility, but he wasn't picking up guys well. He wasn't able to really get connected with guys at the second level. Change of direction was a little questionable. His balance wasn't fantastic either, but center looks like the build for him. And that's why this can be interesting, is where the Lions try to use him at. Really, I mean, Drake Jackson is backup center right now. I don't know how they feel about him, but I guess this will all be sorted out once we get into padded practice and the preseason. Because if this is a player that gets a shot to compete at backup center, there's an opportunity here to potentially take some roles, and that would surprise me because I like Drake Jackson, but at the same time, this guy's experienced. Now, he would then, after his time with Indianapolis, get traded to the Miami Dolphins, and Miami would bring him in as a guy that they looked at as very versatile. So really, they brought him in and they used him at guard. They brought him in, they played him over 500 snaps that season, they played him at the guard position. He mixed in a little bit at center, and this was a quote from him: "I've gotten much more comfortable playing at guard with Miami." There's no guarantee Evan Boehm would have had his last year with Miami because Miami traded for Evan Boehm from the Indianapolis Colts. It was some undisclosed picks, but they did make a trade to bring him in. The coaching staff liked him. They spoke highly of him. But remember, the Miami Dolphins after 2019 blew it all up. They restarted. Whole coaching staff gone. And the coaching staff that liked him was gone. So that's why maybe he was gone. And then 2020, we really didn't get to see him play. So maybe if that coaching staff was still there, maybe he's still on that roster. But it just depends on, will the Lions like it? And then 2020, he really didn't ever get to find the field. He spent time on the Bills with the Jaguars, but he didn't really find the field. So I just wonder how the Lions are going to try to utilize him. But the versatility is nice because he has played both spots, but center definitely seems like the best spot for him. I think Drake Jackson wins the backup role, but he's going to add some very legit competition because it's not as clear now as like, oh, hey, we know where our backup center is. Now there's a guy that's played, has connections with the Rams, and can play a little bit of guard, where like Drake Jackson, he may not have much versatility to bump out to guard. So that experience is huge. Now, if he's fighting for guard, if we're talking about a guy like Logan Stenberg, he's played right guard in the NFL, left guard back in college. So that's very good competition. So when Dan Campbell says, look, Logan, this is a big week, it's a big week for all of these guys on the offensive line. Tommy Kramer, Drake Jackson, Evan Boehm, because even though you may not know about him, he's played well in that little stretch with Indianapolis, and it really didn't slow down when he stepped in and had to play center. So it's an interesting signing. We may do a film video at some point. I'll leave it there, but don't count this dude out. This battle at offensive line may be the most intriguing battle once we put the pads on. Evan Boehm, another offensive lineman that was on the COVID list for a while for the Lions, has been taken off that list. So Evan Boehm is back, but they still went out and they signed Evan Boehm, which tells me that there's spots to be won. Simply as that, spots to be won along the depth offensive line, and we'll see who it is. Right now, it seems all up for grabs. Campbell spoke of Logan Stenberg recently, saying he's a pup. He's got a lot of room to grow. We know this is only his second year in the league. Last year, he really didn't even play on the offensive line. He didn't at all. Former 4th-round pick out of Kentucky. We're talking about Mr. Nasty, right? But he also does have a long way to go, and that's just the truth of it. This is going to be a big week for him. That is a quote from Dan Campbell. This is a big week for him. We need to see when those pads get on. We need to see his ability to drop his hips, get low, and also get movement. That's what this is. This is a big week. And I like how Dan Campbell didn't sugarcoat it, be like, oh, no, it's good. No, it's serious. This is a big week for him. No film on him from last year, which I guess in some way could be sort of like a benefit because he is kind of like a rookie in that way. But at the same time, he wasn't drafted by this regime. It starts to happen. It's a big week for him. Specifically said with Logan Stenberg. Then we're going to hop into preseason. We'll get to see you on, national stage. But this is when things really pop off for those linemen. So it should be exciting. Evan Boehm, welcome to the squad. I hope I'm saying your name right. I know you've had some experience in the league, so he's not going to be an easy out. And he wants to get back at it. I mean, he had that 1 year where he was feeling like, man, I'm a starter. I come out, I'm a starter at guard. And all of a sudden, a couple of years since we've really seen him, he's going to be hungry. Yes, we're talking about linemen. I do think it's important to mention that Jonah Jackson said he put 10 pounds of muscle on. He's been working with our assistant strength and conditioning coach. He's also been learning some martial arts. It's beneficial for a lot of reasons. Not only reacting, right, for punches, things like that. Same thing with the defensive linemen, reacting to their strikes that they have against you. Also, just simply conditioning. Also, I think flexibility here when you talk about kicking, stretching. I think the flexibility is going to improve. And, of course, balance. Being able to stay stable, stay in a really good position where you're not like, oh, I'm balanced, I'm leaning, I'm falling over. All those little things. I could definitely see how this would translate well for an offensive lineman. I like this. I see you, Jonah. Us putting 10 pounds on. He said he changed his diet this offseason. Jonah's put a very big effort towards coming out and being a different player. To talk about the offensive line, might as well give a quick little update on the defensive line. And let's specifically talk about John Penisini, who we know this offseason had surgery to get rid of the calcium deposit buildups on his shoulder. It didn't allow him to lift his arm over his head, and he said it was going on for the last 3 months of the season. That's pretty much the entire season. He said week 4 it started to build up. That's when it started happening. And if you remember the first 2 weeks of the season, he really didn't play. Week 4 was his first game with over 20 snaps defensively. That was against the Saints. It was also his best game up to that point. He had 5 total tackles in that game. But now having surgery this offseason, the guy said he couldn't lift his arm above his head, couldn't work out the upper body. He couldn't push out of his bed. Now he feels better. Now he feels healthy with that surgery. And it's something that we were really under the radar. I remember hearing about this last season with John Penisini. Liam right now has more pass rush ability. That's what he feels on John. Now, John's not to prove him wrong. No question about it. But even coming out of the draft, we knew this. When you watch Lee McNeil's film, he shows you that explosiveness. He shows you that get-off ability. And he was also a 3rd-round pick because he had that ability for a guy that was 327, which was pretty fantastic. Even Frank Ragnow has spoken to it a little bit. And we'll see when the pads come on who is really able to get after the quarterback, right? John Penisini, a healthy Penisini going into year 2, that should be fun to watch. But even coming out of the draft, John wasn't much of a pass rusher. It was like, hey, he can stop the run. He's a nose tackle that can stop the run. Not much of a pass rusher. But, obviously he has something to prove, and getting healthy could help him a ton. He said, I view John as basically a 1st and 2nd down defensive lineman right now. Goal line situations, short yardage situations. Then when we go to 4 down lineman sets, and we saw this a little bit last year, he could slide to the 3 tech and play, defensive tackle. When you go to 4 defensive linemen, obviously you have 2 defensive tackles. We can slide him out a little bit, put him at 3 tech. And we saw Lions do that a little bit last year. Remember, they came out of the season, and they were awful at stopping the run. And it was the focus, hey, if we can't stop the run, we won't be able to get after the quarterback. So he started using John a lot more, and you can see his snap counts just rise. As, he went from 9 snaps to 18 to 19 to 22 snaps in week number 4. He had 5 tackles that game. We throw him out there with Danny Shelton on early downs. They put him out there in red zone situations to help stop the run. That was his role last year. And again, considering the fact that he was playing with this injury where he could not work out, could not lift his arm above his head, he still had a pretty darn good rookie season. He was good last season. Don Penisini can use that as some motivation. Oh, he thinks he gets more pass rush, the rookie? Okay. All right, we'll see what happens when these pads come on when I'm healthy. So I'm excited to see that. I'm just pumping him out. I don't even know if he's thinking like that, but I hope he is. I hope he takes some of that. I'm the best pass rusher. Maybe. Hey, let's do it. Let's go after it. Him getting healthy is going to be awesome because, like I said, you had a 6th-round pick on a terrible defense. Playing pretty darn well. The last 3 months is pretty much the entire season. Hockenson, Jared Goff. I mean, clearly Hockenson's been the number 1 tight end. To me, I feel like there's a gap between number 1 and number 2. Really, number 1, Hockenson, and everybody else, there seems like a gap. We're not really sure who the 4th tight end is if we kept 4 tight ends. We're not really even sure who the 3rd tight end is. I believe Fell's the number 2, but there's opportunity there for a lot of guys that we don't really know we have. But Hockenson has kind of separated himself. We've heard a lot of guys speak very highly of Hockenson, but Goff and Hock are really starting to build a chemistry. And that's something that Goff has been doing. You know, the first day I went on Saturday, I'm watching this guy go through warm-ups with the lineman. And I'm like, oh, that's different. Not even going with the court, you're going with the lineman. He's been building that chemistry, talking to his lineman, talking to his tight end, TJ Hockenson. He's really, they all say he's vocal. He's trying to build that chemistry so far this offseason. He worked with guys in the offseason. Goff came back and said this about Hock. He's a mismatch. All right, if we go to 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, 1 running back, he said if we can get some linebackers and safeties on him, he's a clear mismatch. And one thing I would note about Goff is that Goff does look for his matchups before the snap. He looks, if he sees something that he likes, and I think the best quarterbacks do this, you notice your matchup, you see a guy that you like, you see a match you like, you did this with Tyrell a lot, and that's where you tend to go with the football, right? They kind of feel it before the play. Now, if something changes in coverage afterwards, you might go elsewhere if they start to double or slide someone over. But if it looks the way it did before you snap the ball and you get that one-on-one shot, Goff has shown us that he's going to go to where he feels like the best match is. And he says here he believes that TJ Hockenson is a mismatch. Actually, Dan Campbell, I think, had a really good quote here. And I was like, well, this is kind of savage, but at the same time, I like it. He said this: Goff hasn't really had a good tight end. I read that. I was like, oh, snap. Shots are just fire right there. He says this: look, Higbee was good. He was a dang good tight end, but not like TJ Hockenson, because Hockenson is a real mismatch. He's not only going to go out there and be a good receiver, a good athlete, but can also go out there, line up, and block. And that is one very true point with Dan Campbell, because he is a very complete tight end. I think that's the way to say it here. Very complete tight end. He can pretty much do whatever you ask him. He was the 8th pick in the draft, all right? He should be a complete tight end, right? We drafted a guy that came in looking as a complete tight end. 8th pick in the draft. This is a top-tier talent at tight end. And Dan Campbell clearly believes that he is the best tight end that Jared Goff has ever played with, and I think no question he's the best tight end. Higbee was good, but Higbee was a different style. Higbee's more of just a receiving tight end. They had a couple of tight ends mixed in. They had Everett, they had receiving tight ends. But Hock, very complete tight end. You can put Hock on the field, and the defense doesn't know whether or not he's going to block or go out for a pass, chip block, take off. The defense doesn't really know what to expect because he can bring the whole thing. Plus, you can line him up everywhere. You can line him at wide receiver. You can line him on the line, right? You can put him in line. You can put him everywhere on the field. So that's what makes Hock so tough. Hock is going to make this linebacker group better for the Lions, because this is going to be one of the best tight ends that you're going to face. And because you get to go against this guy every day, in the words of Amani Oruwariye, iron sharpens iron, we get to go against that guy. So these linebackers that are out there trying to prove themselves, if you can go make plays against Hock, you can start to catch up with him. You're going to look a lot better on the field, because that's one of the best to do it. And you also have to go against him when he's blocking, and that's what we're going to see when the pads come on. So some great points there. And with TJ, we saw last year really that big year too. We saw that double up my stats basically year. And that's the case with tight ends. Pretty much every one of the greatest tight ends of all time, quiet year one. Quiet year one. Hock wasn't bad year one. He was just so quiet. He also had some injuries that he dealt with. Then he comes back year 2, and he basically just doubles up his stats. Over 700 receiving yards. His receptions go way up. Big year here from TJ Hockenson. But year 3 then, a lot of times is that opportunity to push it to extraordinary numbers. I want to give you guys a quick little feel-good story. So recently, Lions signed Bruce Hector. So he arrived to practice, and we know the first day of training camp, the Lions went out there, did their 40 up-downs with Dan Campbell. Well, apparently Bruce Hector, he owed the defense 40 up-downs. That's the defensive staple. You come in, you do 40 up-downs, because this is going to be a new year, right? We're going to start the new off year like that. So he goes out there and he starts to do his 40 up-downs because he owed them. Halfway through, the Lions defense, the Lions entire team did the up-downs with Bruce Hector. Everybody got in, started doing it. And Dan Campbell said, at some point, these players, they have to take control of this team. You know, they got to be the guys, and we'll just be here for the techniques that we have to teach them. But this is their team. If you're not getting Coach Carter vibes, you're missing out, okay? If you haven't seen the movie, you got to check it out. I'll show you a little bit of the clip because this is what made me think of.
I'll do push-ups for him. You said we're a team. One person struggles and we all struggle. One player triumphs, we all triumph, right? I'll do some.
A feel-good story. Then it lets Bruce just do a thing and be like, all right, let's wait for Bruce to get done. Like, let's just do it with him. Now, let's get into some of these on-the-field takeaways from Detroit Lions training camp. Now, the emphasis continues to be on the passing game because there are no pads, right? I mean, the offensive line, defensive line not getting a lot of love, but it's tough because there's no pads. The running game. Our guys able to make people miss. Tackling from the secondary, tackling from the linebacker position. Everything changes when the pads come on. So it's going to be a completely different element. We'll have completely different notes when the pads do come on tomorrow. But today, the emphasis continues to be on the passing game, which makes sense for the offense and the defense. And luckily, today, we were able to hear some good news about the Lions' ability to take some shots. So Jared Goff told us recently that, yeah, he likes to take shots down the field. And also, they expect to have a lot of those in the game plan this season with some of the deep threats that they do have. I mean, it was an emphasis. And Goff has done that in the past. And today, we were able to hear the Lions' ability to connect on some of these passes. Now, we've had them kind of sparingly. I know Khalif Raymond had one early in practice, but specifically Saturday, you weren't going to get those from the red zone spot because you can't really take a deep pass when you're in red zone situations. But today, apparently Goff was able to connect with Brashad Perriman on a deep pass on the right sideline, which is really awesome to hear. Brashad Perriman has been a little quiet. I know Saturday, I don't even remember if he caught a pass in those red zone situations, but that makes sense because he's not really a big red zone threat. So Goff went to other guys like his running backs, his tight ends, heck, even Tyrell Williams. Brashad Perriman is at his best when he is able to be a deep threat, but also use that threat of going deep to set up things underneath. And today, apparently, he was able to hit Brashad Perriman on a deep pass. So that's great news. And also Victor Bolden, where it was apparently just a beautiful pass from Jared Goff between the safety and the cornerback. Now, that's also good news for Victor Bolden because that's some good reps. When we hear the battle of guys like him and Khalif Raymond, there's a chance that both of them make the team. So the more plays that he was able to make puts him in a good spot. I think Khalif's in a great spot right now. But for those two guys battling for special team spots, battling for offensive reps, to hear good news like this from Victor Bolden is a pretty big deal. And whenever guys are out, you got to take advantage of those opportunities. So those two guys made some big plays. But Jared Goff has also credited this secondary for playing well. He said they've played pretty well. So I'm just taking what the defense has given me. And that is the dump offs. That is the tight end. That is underneath routes. Specifically, that linebacker and secondary unit had surprised me when I got to see them in person. We've heard good notes from Jeff Okudah and those guys. And today that continues. So that's awesome to hear. But this secondary is off to a pretty nice start so far. And there's still a long way to go. But I'm telling you, man, the impact of a guy like Aubrey Pleasant and Aaron Glenn, those two guys working together, has clearly had an effect on some of these guys. Because it's not only what a couple players have done individually, it's also what they have done as a team. Their chemistry that they have been building together, but also schematically. Because not just simply development as a player alone, it's a different scheme. This scheme is built for more opportunistic opportunities. Does that even make sense? I don't know. Amani has played well. And Dan Campbell kind of brought that to our attention, saying that, yeah, Jeff Okudah is going to get the attention because he's a third pick, which makes sense. But Amani has also been someone that has caught Dan Campbell's eye. Plus, think about Amani so far. I mean, we've been hearing about a quiet Brashad Perriman. A lot of times, Amani has been that matchup. We've seen Tyrell on Okudah, and Okudah has probably been winning that battle so far. But then also Brashad on Amani. And Amani has kept him pretty quiet. That's not just Amani alone. It's also part of the scheme. But Amani has done a good job so far, and that's huge. Coaching staff spoke on Amani Oruwariye, saying that, look, he's got the ability. Now we just have to give him the blueprint. The Lions have a young secondary, and this was the worst pass defense in football last season. And sure, the offense usually comes out of the gate a little bit slower than the defense. The offense probably lost some weapons from last season. So there's factors here. But there's also the credit that you have to give to this defense for coming out, specifically the secondary, where the coverage is going to be emphasized and the passing game is going to be emphasized right now because there are no pads on. You got to give credit to those guys. And out of the similar guys, specifically in the secondary, you're talking about your top two corners are the same guys here from last year. Your top two safeties are the same guys here from last year. And the linebackers, you have to have different types of linebackers for the scheme. And the Lions have addressed that with Sean Dan Hamilton and Alexander Anzalone, it's not like they invested a ton there. It's not like they spent and threw out tons of money here. Not only just this coaching staff alone, what this coaching staff brings in terms of development, yes, credit to them because they do that at a high level. They get the best out of their players, but also credit to the position that they're putting specifically this secondary in. And the last scheme that they were in with Patricia, yeah, I mean, that scheme can work. You need the best of the best cornerbacks. So when you're talking about young guys like Okudah stepping in year one, Desmond Trufant was clearly not the same. Tough position to be in. And look, we could talk all day about scheme. We really could, and we've done videos on that, so I don't want to go super into detail here. But Alex Anzalone, I think, made a great point, and he said this. Amani keeps talking about how it's more man-matchiness. Alex Anzalone was part of the New Orleans Saints last season. Even though they ran a 4-3 or 4-2-5 defense, and the Lions aren't really doing that because they don't have exactly the pieces to be a 4-3 defensive front, the secondary and how they're going to do things and how the linebackers get involved with this coverage is something that Alex was a part of. So he understands what Amani is talking about. And Alex said this. When you understand your leverage, how to use your leverage, and give credit to Aaron Glenn because he's talked about this, how last season Okudah, for young cornerbacks, they're just trying to cover the guy, but you have to understand your leverage and what your body's going to take away from a quarterback in front of a receiver. When you understand where your help is, that's a huge part of this defensive scheme. Realizing that, hey, you're going to have a lot more help in this defensive scheme than you did in the last one. The last one, you were on islands on the outside. This defense is built schematically to have more help for these cornerbacks. So this coverage scheme can take pressure off of cornerbacks individually because now instead of being tasked with, hey, you got to follow this guy around the entire play, like that's your responsibility. It's you versus him. Now it spreads that burden out to everybody. Linebackers, safeties, because they have to be able to pass off these routes. They have to be able to help in coverage, and that's why you need guys that can cover at linebacker. You need them more athletic. You need them to lose some of those pounds so they can be a little bit quicker because this responsibility is going to be passed off. And this is a great example for the Bears here against Green Bay because the safety, and again, this is a split safety coverage look. Once they make that break and this slant cuts inside, the safety now takes that responsibility on, and the cornerback, his primary receiver now is the receiver who jumped into the flat. So you need to have versatility, number one, because you have to be able to have guys that can pass off routes because it may start as this cornerback is lined up against top receiver, but by the end of the play, it could be your third cornerback lined up against the top receiver if it passes off that way. You also need to have fantastic communication. And this is why it's kind of beneficial that we have a lot of the same guys here. Different scheme, but they all have pretty good chemistry with each other. Campbell fined Tracy Walker for not getting him an interception. He said Tracy Walker now owes me 2. Fine Tracy Walker for not giving him an interception because this is an opportunity for Walker, a guy that's had 1 pick in the last 2 years, specifically 0 last season, which is just inexcusable. That can't be the case with a guy like Walker. Aaron Glenn believes that he can get more to a ball-hawking safety for Lions, and he brought it up. He talked about, look, if you look at the Saints and what their safeties has done production-wise, every year, 3 basically to 5 interceptions these guys are able to put up because that's the scheme that they're put in. It's going to lead to more opportunities. All right, so you see these young Marcus Williams. You see, Malcolm Jenkins come over, and they're able to push their interception numbers way up, like career high numbers. And that's what they believe can happen here with guys like Walker. So Dan Campbell puts it on, look, you owe me 2 now. He didn't actually charge it. He said, look, I'll pay, the $50. But now you owe me 2. All right, there's no interest on this because you didn't give me the first one. Now you owe me 2 of them. So now I need to see 2 interceptions. Today, Anthony Pittman made probably the play of the day because Anthony Pittman came up with the second interception of camp, back-to-back training camp days with a pick. He could have had 2 today. Picked off David Blau today where he said he thinks David Blau felt like, he could squeeze the ball in there and he just jumped on it and intercepted. It's going to be important for these linebackers like Anthony Pittman, who said he lost 15 pounds this offseason because now he's moving more to that inside linebacker role. And you got to be able to fly around the field if you're going to play inside linebacker in this defense that the Lions are building. And that's why we've seen Tavai losing the weight, Pittman losing the weight, Alex Anzalone, guys that can fly around the field because this scheme calls for that. It calls for that defensively. So for Pittman to push back the inside linebacker where he feels comfortable, as opposed to him putting on 20 pounds with Patricia to play the edge position, the jack role. And those miscommunications are things that, yes, the offense will clean up, they'll get better at, but also sometimes it's going to have to do with the offense not being able to completely pick up on what the defense is in until post-snap. Because like we said, our replayability to have a pre-snap look and post-snap will be completely different. Tracy Walker also made a big play today in coverage where he jumped down on a tight end crossing route. That takes you to the split safety concept because now these safeties are a little more free. You're a little bit more open to make plays. Again, this is the same thing. The burden's on these safeties to be able to pass off guys, play in your zone. You can jump down on routes, come down and make plays. And that's what Walker did today when he jumped down on a tight end crosser, forced the pass behind the tight end and it fell incomplete. Those things, when these safeties and corners get more comfortable, they're going to be able to make more plays because they're going to be able to play aggressive. And they looked like that on Saturday. They looked like they were flying around. And that's what we're hearing so far. And that's great to hear from the safety. You get to have fun. He likes that he's able to voice his opinions, right or wrong. And that's credit to the coaching staff, being very open-minded, giving them an opportunity to learn. You know, and these safeties, they're wanting to learn. They're following these coaches around. They want to learn from these guys. They're very welcoming. Everybody's saying the same thing. It's not just a one-off. Everybody's saying they're having fun. Okay, and you're going to have fun when you're making plays defensively. You're allowed, to go fly around and make plays. And that's what's so awesome about this defense is a team that for the last 3 years has not been able to get turnovers whatsoever is in a position where now that could turn around this year. It can make some more plays defensively, which should be fun. This is where I personally think the versatility of our safeties, Walker and Will, having the background saying, hey, I can go up, play man coverage, but then I can also play deep safety. I can also play the splits coverage look like I did back in college. That versatility is huge. I saw Will line up against tight end, play aggressive, play with tons of confidence. That versatility is huge. But also, they just need to be aggressive. They need to be attacking. They need to be willing to fly around the field. Confident, no second guessing, because you ain't going to get picks by hesitation. You got to go at it. This is a completely new scheme. You're passing players off. You're going to get opportunities to jump on things, take chances. But those picks change games. Usually the team that leads the interception battle wins the game. And that's what the Lions want to be this year. So it should be a refreshing change of things. You want to talk about versatility? How about Mike Ford today? Ford being able to play slot and outside corner with no Dunbar, because there was no Dunbar, played fantastic coverage on Tyrell Williams on a deep shot. That's versatility. Michael Ford, another guy that was here. And it's weird that we're talking about, hey, they're playing at a good level. I know. All the factors are going in their favor right now. The fact is, so far, it's been good things. We've heard good things. And that's big. You need that versatility. So I think, actually, that the fact that these guys already have that relationship, and we're seeing it more expressed this season. Guys handshaking. Guys getting together, talking, hyping each other up. The environment's different. The feel is different. And when you guys see that they already all have relationships, that's going to translate to the field, trusting one another. I'm going to trust that you take your guy. That way I'm not just following. We can trust each other on the field. That's an underrated aspect. Because if we brought in all new corners, they might be able to play this scheme, but does that necessarily mean that they trust each other? That's one of the biggest things. You have to trust each other defensively, and I think the Lions will have that trust. Now, special teams-wise, the battle between Bullock and Matthew Wright, definitely leading Bullock's favor. Saturday, it looked like it was the Bullock one that day today. Today, Bullock went perfect again. Still not 50 yards, but still went perfect on his kicks. Matthew Wright went 3 for 6. Yikes. Still a lot of time to go through training camp and preseason once they get on the field. Everything could change once you're actually on the field. But so far through practice, Bullock is definitely the favorite right now. The long snap battle between Daly and Muehlbach, I don't really know how we could judge this, but I would say unless something crazy happens, Muehlbach's probably going to win that role once again. He's been challenged many times, but Muehlbach has consistently run that. So I think I would put my money on Don Muehlbach. With this clip from Dan Campbell, and I know this isn't new, but Dan Campbell had this little speech on Saturday, before the practice started, and he had this to the fans. And I thought this was just kind of an awesome speech. He knows, right? They all hear the national media say, hey, they ain't going to be good. They're going to win 3 games. Their over-under is terrible. They're going to be last in the division. They don't have weapons. And Dan Campbell addressed it, saying, look, everybody wants to count us out, and that's fine. We are losers, and that's okay. Being sarcastic, he's not actually saying we're losers. That's okay. Here are all those things. We'll just keep coming out here. We'll keep getting better. Keep doing our work. We'll get a little bit better every day. When they show up, we'll just see what happens. Keep counting us out. In the words of Jamal, please keep underestimating us. In the words of Dan Campbell, yeah, we are those losers. We're going to use that as motivation. So when they come here, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Set the expectations low. Do it. Do it. That way we can surprise everybody when this season starts. And he also brings up, look, you fans, we got to bring them energy this year. And they know we going to bring the energy. I love it. As a fan, I'm like, yeah, I'm bringing all the energy, baby. So I'm just pumped for this season. I think this speech is something that I should leave you guys with.
Bull fans for a long time, and I know you've had a lot of heartbreaks, and there's been a lot of adversity. And I can't say we promise you anything, man. We're going to do everything we can. I'm just telling you, I told you that from day one. We're going to try to give you guys something that embodies who you are, all right? And we're going to give all we got, man. We just want a chance to fight them in the fourth quarter and see if we can win the games. That's the whole point of this right now. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a roster and find the guys, which I think we got the right guys in here a little bit. I see you waving at me. I see you. All right. We're trying to build a roster of fancy guys that are really about what Detroit's about and what we are. You know, everybody wants to count us out. That's fine. You know, we're not good enough. All right, we're a bunch of losers. We're all these things, and that's okay. It's okay. We'll just keep coming out here doing our work. We'll do our deal. We'll get a little bit better every day. All right, and then when they show up, we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? So, all right, last thing I would say for all of you is, here's the truth. You guys got fans, it's been a long time. Last year, you go out there to play, and as much as we all love this game, not having you guys out there is just tough. It's a little tough. You got to create your own energy. But I'm telling you, and it's the truth, we feed off your energy. We really do, man. And I'm a huge believer in energy. So, man, give us some energy. I know you guys will, but give us the energy as well.
Clapping with me right now. I don't know what you're doing. Stand up wherever you are, and let's just get some claps. People may think, what's he doing? Why is he clapping? We all know why we're clapping. All right? If that didn't get you hyped, I don't know what does. I'm hyped from that. Are you not pumped? Woo! Hey, come on. Hey, let's clap it up. Come on, man.